Hi everyone, hope you all doing well. Welcome back to our channel. In this video, I'm going to talk about data connectors of Microsoft Sentinel, and I'm going to showcase how you can automate reports with the help of API. The question is why you should know about this, because think about a scenario wherein as a part of daily health monitoring activity, you must share this report of active data connectors. Now, unfortunately, there is no option to schedule data connector connectivity status report by default, either on Azure portal or on XDR portal. So what you see now is the XDR portal where I have open data connector option, and you can see it is showing me all the data connectors. However, this console does not gives you the option to send a report whether a specific data connector is connected or not. Okay. So in this case, what we will do is we will extract this information through API and then send the response through email. And this is something end to end, which I'm going to show you with both PowerShell as well as Python. So let me quickly show you the demo, what exactly we are going to learn in this particular video. So this is a PowerShell script. If I run this particular script, an email will be triggered from this particular mailbox, which is soc1@conceptswork.in to my global admin. Okay. So let's say if I run this particular script, it will take a couple of seconds because there are three different steps fundamentally which are happening. The very first one is it is querying data connector, then it is extracting the last log received query, and then sending the response to the respective mailbox. Perfect. So let me go back to my browser. Yeah, and you can see I'm getting this report now. Now you can see it is showing me the title of all the data connectors, whether there is any data ingestion or not, whether the connectivity status is connected or disconnected, and then the actual query which is used to extract this information. Okay. Now, this is something which I've shown you through PowerShell. However, the same information is also available with Python. Okay, so this script that you see here right now is the Python script. And you can see this is a report which is being sent with the help of Python. Now, both of these scripts that I'm going to use and showcase, they are available in the repository. So this is the particular script, the PowerShell script. And if I talk about Python, this is the one which is related to data connectors. And I'm going to use these scripts itself in this particular video to make sure that whenever you are trying to use these scripts, they should work as it is. Okay. So let's begin by understanding what are the prerequisites that you need to have so that you can use these scripts. Okay. The very first one is Entra ID application. So if you have seen the first three videos of this series, you will be able to relate what is the purpose of Entra ID application. Since we will be using client credential flow, so I need client ID and client secret, then the same application should also have Microsoft Sentinel reader permission assigned. Okay. My machine already has Python and Jupyter Notebook installed. And then lastly, the application that we are going to use, it should also have Microsoft Graph mail.send permission so that we can send the report to a specific mailbox. Now, since I'm showing you the art of possibility, I'm using client credential flow. But let's say you want to implement this for your production environment wherein somebody should run this script on a daily basis and there has to be a user interaction. You can develop authorization code flow. Else, the other option is you can also implement key vault just to make sure the client ID and client secret is protected. Okay. So just to reiterate, even though we get this data connector information, we get connectivity status and we see the last data received. However, there is no option to automate this. Okay. Now let's see how we are going to achieve this with the help of PowerShell or Python. Okay. The very first step is we already have Entra ID application. So what we'll do is we'll use client ID and client secret to request token from Entra ID. Then once we get this token, which is moreover related to Azure, then what we will do is we will request data connector information through a specific endpoint. If you guys remember in my last video, I have shown you how you can create the URL for a specific resource type. So we are going to follow the same process. Then once you have this data connector information in the object itself that we are getting in a response, for each and every data connector, there will be a query that will be mentioned, and that is the last log received query for that particular connector. Okay. Precisely speaking, that will be specifically related to a specific table that is required for that particular data connector. However, we will use the same idea that if there is a last log receive query coming for a specific data connector, we'll send that query to Log Analytics Workspace API to get some response. And then what we'll do is once we'll have that response, we'll bind them in a table so that we can check whether a specific data connector is connected or not. And lastly, we'll extract all this report and send it through through let's say either PowerShell or Jupyter Notebook to a mailbox. Now, one more thing which is moreover related to usage of this particular script. As I've said before, I am using client credential flow. However, if you want, you can use authorization code flow, or if you want, you can use keywords as well. Okay. So let me now go back to my machine where I will be showing you this end to end. Okay. So this is the PowerShell script. Okay. However, I already have all this information populated here, but still I'll open a new tab, and now I will be copying the script which already exists in the repository so that it will be exceptionally easy for you guys to replicate. Okay. So I'll click on PowerShell script, and then I'll click on Microsoft Sentinel. And then here I'm going to click on this option, which is Microsoft Sentinel Data Connector. I'm just going to copy this script end to end. I'll come back to my machine, which is this one, and I'm going to paste it here. Okay. Now let me walk you through this script line by line so that it can make sense. Okay. This is a generic description for what exactly the script is doing. Okay. So you can see this script is created to query all the details related to data connectors of Microsoft Sentinel. This script queries data connector details, and then it extracts the last data received query for each data connector. This script uses log extraction API of Log Analytics Workspace to check for last log received. And finally, it extracts and combines all the data and send the reports to the respective recipients. Now, you need to make sure that you have granted Microsoft Sentinel Reader permission and mail.send permission to Microsoft Graph application, or let's say the application that we have created, before you run this script. Okay. Now, this script is designed to use client credential flow, so you feel free to add keyword capabilities if you want to prevent direct usage of client ID and client secret in the script itself. Okay. Now, step number 1 in line number 10, what you have to do is you have to add your tenant domain here. Okay. So in my case, it will be conceptswork.in. You can see I've also mentioned a comment here, which is to add your domain. Now, this section is basically trying to extract the token endpoint of your tenant. Now here, you have to provide the workspace ID of the workspace where you have set up Microsoft Sentinel. So for that, I'll come back to my browser and I will go to my Log Analytics workspace. And here I'm going to select my workspace, and then I'm going to copy the workspace ID, which is this one. Okay. Now I'll come back to my machine and I'll paste this value here. Okay. Make sure you copy workspace ID, not the workspace name. Okay. Now here it is asking for application client ID. So in my last video, I have shown you how you can create an application and then assign the respective permission to that particular application. Okay. Now in this case, what I need is client ID. So I'll copy my client ID for my respective application. And let me show you that as well. So I will go to Microsoft Entra ID. And then I will click on app registration and I will choose the application that we have created, which is CW-Azure API in my last video. I'll copy this and I'll come back to my machine and I will paste this value here. Now I also need client secret. So I've already copied client secret in a different notepad altogether. I'm just going to copy that value and paste it here. Now, if you already have client secret available with you, just go ahead and copy paste that. Otherwise, you can come here and create a new secret if at all it is required. Okay. So I'll come back to my machine. Now, this particular section from line number 14 to line number 23 is where I'm requesting token so that I can read the data connector information. So if you remember, the resource is https management.core.windows.net, exactly what I've explained in my second video. And this particular section is only to request token for reading data connector information. Make sure that you remember this keyword of Azure Access Token. Now the next section is Microsoft Graph request, okay, because this is something that we are going to use to send email. Now in my case, I am using the same application which I have used for Microsoft Sentinel, and I have granted mail.send permission to this particular application itself. What you can do is you can choose a different application if you want, just to make sure that the secret is not compromised. However, it will not be a very fair practice, honestly speaking, because if the script is exposed, anybody will be able to read that. Okay. However, with all this being said, key vault and everything is already there. So if you want, you can implement that particular capability. Now, this section of line number 25 to 34 is where I'm requesting graph token. Now, this section will only work if your application has the permission to send the email on behalf of user. The question is how exactly you're going to grant this particular permission. So let's say if this particular permission as of now does not exist for this application, then what I will do is I will click on add a permission. I will click on Microsoft Graph, and then I will click on this option of application permission. And here I'm going to search for mail.send. Okay. I will select this and I will click on add permission. Then once you do that, then you have to click on this option of grant admin consent for concepts work, and the respective permission will be granted. Okay. Now, the next section which you see here is related to querying data for a specific workspace. Okay. Now, this section, and this section, these are three different sections and they all have their own purpose. Okay. So I will again copy the client ID. I'm using the same application which has all the permissions. I will copy this and I will paste this value here. And then I will copy this and I will paste this value here. So as of now, I'm sorted with three different tokens that I will be using for three different data sets. The very first one, this section, is querying data connector information. This section is requesting access token to send email through Microsoft Graph, or let's say for Microsoft Graph. And this section is where I'm going to query the data for the last log received for a specific table altogether. Okay. Now this section, line number 48, you see data connector, and this is where I have to update my resource ID. Okay. So for that, I'll again go back to my portal and I will search for log analytics workspace. And here I'm going to click on my workspace, and then I'm going to click on this option of JSON view, and I'm going to copy the resource ID. I'll again come back to my machine and I will paste this value here. Okay. Now let me just remove this additional / and let me just show you this value once. Okay. I copy this and I paste it here, and let me break it down for you so that it is relatable. Okay. So if you remember in the URL creation part, I was referring to management.azure.com as the base URL. Then till this particular part is what the resource ID. Fundamentally speaking, that's what I have mentioned in my video. Workspace name, CW-Sentinel. Then this is the resource type, which is data connector. And then this particular section is where you have specific API version mentioned. Okay. Now, there is a very specific reason why I'm using this version, and I will talk about that in a couple of minutes. However, this is how this URL is created. Okay. Now, I'll again come back to my script, and this is where I'm requesting data. Now, the data which is available by default, there has to be a lot of customization that needs to be done to extract the respective information. Don't worry, I've already done it for you. You can see this particular function or this particular loop is actually extracting that information and querying the data connector raw data into this particular object. And then for this particular object, I'm also extracting or filtering the entries wherein the last data received query should not be null. And this particular section that you see over here is where exactly everything is happening fundamentally in terms of querying the data through log analytics workspace API. You can see this is the log extraction API where my workspace ID, which I have given in the beginning, is getting added and the respective query is happening. Okay. Now you have to scroll down to the bottom. Don't make any change anywhere else. Scroll down more, and here you have to give recipient address. So here I'm going to give globalconceptswork.onmicrosoft.com. This is a mailbox where the email has to be sent, and I'm going to add now my user's email, which is soc1@conceptswork.in. Okay. Now let me clear the screen and I will click on send. Let's wait for a couple of seconds. The expected behavior is this script, which I have just copied and shown you, adding the respective details for each and every section, should work as expected. And I should get a new email. Perfect. As you can see, it's working. And this is my email. Okay. So this method that I've shown you is moreover related to how you can use this script, which is already available, and specifically the PowerShell one. Okay. So let me just show you that script real quick. So again, this is where you have to go and use this particular script. Okay. Now let's talk about the one which is related to Python. Okay. Now I have intentionally kept it in separate parts so that I can show you each and every component. However, when you are using this for your own environment, it's your choice whether you want to use it, let's say in one particular section itself, or whether you want to divide it or not. Okay. So let me do something. Let me just go ahead and create a new notebook altogether. Okay. And again, as I was showing in PowerShell, I'm going to use the same concept here as well, wherein I'm just going to show you each and every step in terms of how exactly everything is working. Okay. So this is the first section that I have just copied. And again, this script is created to query all the details related to data connectors. It uses pandas, matplotlib, re, math, time, term, color, and other modules to show the results. The section mentioned here is the list of modules that will be used in this particular script. Run this first section to check if any module is installed or not. So let's say if there is any module which is mentioned here and it does not exist in your machine, then you can use this particular command just to go ahead and install that particular module. Again, this is moreover related to Python. I'm sure you guys are more, let's say, you guys have more awareness in terms of how this part works. So I'm not teaching Python. I'm just trying to solve a problem related to Microsoft Sentinel console. Okay. Now I'll again come back to my script, and this time I'm going to copy this particular section, which is the second section. And I'll again come back to my machine and I will paste it here. Now let me walk you through what exactly is happening. This section is only checking whether the module is installed or not. However, this is a section where every module is getting imported. Now, there could be a possibility that a specific module is not used in this particular script, because as we move along, I'm going to add n number of different changes to this particular script itself, and I will keep on customizing this just to make sure you get the results as it is I'm showing here in this particular video. Okay. Now let me tell you what exactly is happening here. That this particular section that you see is to make sure that whenever a data frame is loaded, it shows me all the columns, it shows me all the rows. That's the purpose of this particular section. Now here where it says authority URL, just go ahead and replace your domain with conceptswork.in. You will type your own domain here. Now in the payload, you see client ID. So I'll go back to my script of PowerShell and I will quickly copy the client ID. Okay. Copy client ID and I'll mention it here. And then I need client secret. I will copy this value and paste it in client secret. Whenever or wherever fundamentally there is any change which is required, I have specifically mentioned it. Okay. Now here I need subscription ID. Okay. So I'll go back to my browser and from here I'll copy the subscription ID. And I'm going to paste it here. And then here I'm going to copy my resource group name. Let me go back to my browser. This is my resource group name. Now you may be wondering that why I am doing all this in Python. However, that was not the scenario with PowerShell, because in PowerShell, I have kind of hard coded this value. Okay. You can see it has everything. However, in Python, I'm declaring variables and then I'm using those variables in creating this particular link. So it's a slightly different approach that I'm using here in the Python script. Okay. Now it is asking me for workspace name, which is Sentinel, which is CW-Sentinel. So let me come back here and let me just open Notepad. I'm intentionally copy pasting everything so that we should not end up in a scenario wherein anything is missed. Okay. CW-Sentinel, and I will paste this value here. Now this is where the token is getting requested for accessing data connector information. Okay, because this is the field which is required to access data connector information. Now again, I'm just going to copy client ID and I will give it here, and I will copy client secret and I will give it here, and that's it. This is where the token is getting requested for log analytics workspace. However, there is one more information that we have to fill in, and that is workspace ID. So let me just quickly copy the workspace ID and paste it here. Okay. Now let's just run this. Okay. It's running. Once it is running, it will show me a specific entry over here. Perfect. You can see. Now let's just see what we are getting in access underscore token. Okay. So this is my access token to access data connector information, and let me see what I am getting for query access token. These are two different access token, fundamentally speaking. If you'll extract these values, you will see different results. Okay. So this first section and second section is working for me now. Now I'll come back to my script and I'll copy the third section, which is actually querying the data of data connectors. Okay. So I'll come back here and I'll paste this value. So here you can see it is going to subscription, and then it is taking the value from here, subscription ID, resource group name from here. And then if I'll scroll right, you can see it is going to data connectors and it is returning some information, and it is saving that information in the form of a data frame. Okay. Which is this one, DF. So if I'll run this, it will take a couple of seconds and then it's completed now. Let's say if I want to see what my data frame is, you can see I'm getting this information of connectors. Okay. Now I'll again come back to my script and I'll copy this particular section. Now I'll come back to my script and here I will paste this value. Now before I run this, let me show you something which I got from this particular result itself. Okay. Let me scroll down slowly. So you can see that this particular property section, which I'm getting in a response of data connector, has lot many details. It has base query, it has last data received query, and this is exactly what I'm extracting for each and every data connector. Okay, so let me just type here data connectors and show you. You can see now it is showing me the last data received query for some of the connectors. For those connector for which it is not showing any which ways, it will not make any sense for you to go ahead and check the connectivity status. However, you can only do it for the one for which we are getting this in the response. Okay. So this particular section is to extract that data. You can see here I'm extracting that particular data, and then I'm creating a specific object which I'm going to add in data connectors, and here exactly I am rendering that data connector. Okay, so in my script which exists in the repo, I have removed this last line of data connector, but if you want, you can use that. Now I'm going to use this particular section for querying data. Okay, which means it should show me whether the last log received is showing any result or not. Okay, so fundamentally, if you want, let's say you want to understand what is the KQL which is being sent. Okay, so here I can say print payload. Okay, it will show me the actual query which is being sent, okay, for each and every data connector. So let me just run this and let's see what all we get in results. Okay, so you can see for the very first entry where the last log received query was found, this is the particular query which was being sent. Then this is the second one, and this will go on. Since I mean there are a couple of loops which I have created, it is going to take a couple of seconds. So I'll pause and will resume once it is completed. Perfect. So it took around a minute to complete this particular section. Now there is one more very important aspect that I would like to discuss here, and that is you can see that I have added a kind of snooze for 5 seconds, because at times this log analytic API, this log extraction API, it shows you error and it asks you to wait for some time. So if you add this value of 5 seconds, or let's say 3 seconds, then you will kind of avoid that particular error. Okay, now let me go back to my browser again, where I have the script open, and I'm going to copy this. This is basically just adding one more column to make sure the serial number is populated for each and every data frame, kind of fixing the index. Okay, so now again, you can see it is not showing me any information because I have removed it. So let's say I want to understand, or I want to see what is data connector report. So you can see it is showing me the same results. My data connector name, last log received, no data ingestion, status is disconnected, and this was the query which was used. And you can see I'm getting the list of the data connectors which are available. Okay. So if you want, you can keep this. If you want, you can remove it. Now I'll come back to my script again. And this is a specific section that I have added just to make sure that you can extract this report as well on the machine on which it is working. Okay. So let's say if I do this, then it will save a file named as data connector report.csv. Okay. So let's say if I go here, and you can see this is a report which is created 9 seconds ago. So if I want, I can just open this particular report, and then I will be able to see all the information of this particular report locally on the machine itself. You can see it is the CSV report. Now I'll again come back to my browser, and this is the section where now I'm requesting token for Microsoft Graph. Okay. So once again, we have to provide client ID and client secret. Now, if you read these instructions, it will be exceptionally clear in terms of knowing what exactly is happening. Okay. This section will use Microsoft Graph client credential flow and will send an email to the respective recipient. Before executing this section, make sure you have granted mail.send permission to the application. You can also use MSAL libraries to implement user-based authentication methods. Okay, just please ignore my typos. Okay, now I'll scroll up and I will copy the client ID, and I will come back to this section and I will paste it here. I'll again go back and copy my client secret, and now I will again come at the end and paste this value. Now, okay, it is giving me an error. What is this error? Complex.json default decoder raw exception access token expecting a line 3 column character 4. Just give me a minute, I'm going to fix it. Okay, the reason why I'm getting this because the domain name itself is not added here. So I'll just go ahead and update this domain, and perfect. Now I have graph token. You can see. Now let me just show you something real quick. I'll go to jwt.ms, copy, and then paste. Remove this last one and this one at the beginning. Perfect. Now you can see it has mail.send role assigned as well, kind of permission assigned. Okay. Now I'll come back here and I'll remove this. Now let me go back to browser and copy the next section, which is this one. Okay. I'll copy this. Now there are two methods which I have added. Okay. This particular method will not send the data in the body itself. Okay. Now let's just populate the data which is required for this particular step. And this is where you have to add recipient information. Okay. So concepts work.onmicrosoft.com. And this is where I'm going to add the sender UPN, which is my user one at conceptswork.in. Now I have sent this. Okay, it failed. update user UPN sock1 at conceptswork.in. Okay, sorry. This is where as well where I have to add the change. And I think it worked. Yeah, perfect. So I can see the email just now. Now you can see the body is not having the actual table. Okay. Now let me show you one more method, the last one that I have implemented. And if I use this one, then all the information will be available. Okay. So I'm going to paste it now. And let me just update the details. Conceptswork.in here to the user where I have to send conceptswork.onmicrosoft.com, and here again my user sock1 at conceptswork.in. Now I'll come back here and 1201, you can see this is the email which has all the data in the body itself. Okay. So this is how, fundamentally speaking, you can use both the scripts which are already available. I have created them, and either the PowerShell one or the Python one, depending upon your choice. And with this being said, you can see, even though we have only discussed about data connector, you can see there are so many scripts available here, and this list will just keep on going because my priority is to complete this playlist as soon as possible. Now, just one last aspect which I mentioned that I will cover, and which is related to API version. Okay. Now I will show you something wherein there is a decent amount of time that you have to spend in terms of figuring out which API will give you proper result, or let's say which API version will give you proper result. Now, if I talk about current Microsoft documentation, okay, it asks me to use this particular API version, which is 2025-09-01. Okay. Let me show you what exactly you will get if you use this API version. Okay. So for this, I'm quickly using Postman just to make sure, I can show you results real quick. So I remove this. So yeah, management.azure.com, then my resource ID. This is my workspace, data connector, API version, and I'll click on send. Okay. Now the response will not be something that you will be expecting. You can see I'm only getting one result. Okay. Now, if I go back to my browser once, okay, and if I show you this particular section, it's only giving me one single option as of now at the top, but you can see I'm getting these many which are listed here. Now, there is a method which you can do, on the Postman itself, just to look for all the supported API versions. So let's say here, if I do 2026, I know there is no API version available, but you can see now it gives me the list of all the supported versions. So this is the method that I used to reach to a version which gives me all the information. Okay. So if I show you my script again, the one that I'm using is this one, which is API version 2024-10-01 preview. Now, this is the one which is actually giving all the information which we fundamentally need. Okay. So now let's say if I click on send, I will get the information on which the entire script is working. It has all the graph queries, it has last data type queries, and everything fundamentally which is required for this particular video. Okay. So just a quick recap. This is exactly what we have done. We have used Jupyter Notebook and PowerShell to request a token from Entra ID for both Azure as well as Microsoft Graph. Then we extracted this information. We used the query to extract information from Log Analytics workspace. And lastly, we added that into a report and then sent to an email. Now, there is also one specific video created to in terms of showing how you can extract data from Log Analytics workspace. Okay. So if at all you come across any challenge, okay, related to this particular section or knowing how exactly this section is working, please go ahead and watch the video of log extraction through Log Analytics API and you'll come to know. Now, since the length of the video is already beyond the limits, so there are ways wherein you can schedule these scripts to run on a specific schedule using Azure function. So let me know if you want us to showcase this as well in the comment section. So this was all about knowing Microsoft Sentinel Data Connector API part. In the next video, I'm going to showcase how you can perform Microsoft Sentinel analytical rule analysis. Okay. So thank you so much. Thanks for watching. If you think that this channel is helping you to learn anything new, please feel free to subscribe and share this video with your technical community. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time.